What is up, duelists, and welcome to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today I'm coming at you with a Master Duel format discussion with the newest Forbidden and Limited List update, as well as the Dracotail pack releasing. And of course, the Duelist Cup second stage is around the corner, which I am going to participate in, and I am going to stream my run over on Twitch. You'll find the link to that in the description down below if you want to follow the Twitch channel and watch my progression through the second stage this time around. Without further ado, hope you enjoy the tier list. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are getting closer to that 100k, which I would really like to hit, so feel free to help me out with that. But for now, hope you enjoy the discussion slash tier list for current Master Duel. Let's begin. The categories today, top tier, are decks that I expect to perform very well at the Duelist Cup, and also would not be surprised at all if one of those will end up winning the whole thing. Strong decks are decks that I think you can definitely do well with in the Duelist Cup, but I'm not super sure that they are the best choice, but they are good. Solid choices are just decks that are okay. I personally probably wouldn't play them if you want your best chances of winning the Duelist Cup, but they are good enough to do well, or maybe top 100 if that's what you're trying to do. Mediocre decks is decks that I really wouldn't recommend, and unplayable is decks that are, well, I think unplayable and have basically no chance of doing well, unfortunately. Let's just hop in and get rid of Argo Stars real quick. That deck is unplayable, unfortunately. The order is random. I just clicked all the images in my folder and dragged them in. I don't know why Argo Stars is first, but Argo Stars is pretty bad, unfortunately. Pretty bad archetype. Blue Eyes is a deck that I still see it a decent amount whenever I play Master Duel, like especially in the Challenger Cup. A couple of people rocked up with it. Now that Challenger Cup was shared card pool, so you know the options, you do have to play 3 different decks basically, so it did come up there a little bit. It's either going to be like the very bottom of solid, but for the most part I think it's more like mediocre, because I think Blue Eyes struggles really hard when decks make even half boards, and it's not like stopping decks from making half boards right now is just kind of difficult with Blue Eyes hand traps and Blue Eyes non-engine. I think it's not the greatest spot for Blue Eyes this time around. I don't really expect it to do well. Branded is a solid deck in Master Duel still. I don't think it comes into like my top 5 or whatever, but I think there is always a couple of branded soldiers that play their 60 card branded versions, or 50 or whatever. I've seen people play, I mean, this also most notably does not include Dracotail branded. We're going to talk about Dracotail branded separately, but branded, like basically branded is just, I think, a solid deck that you can play if you really want to. I do think there's better options, and therefore I'm putting it in solid. Heartmage is, in my opinion, the least exciting deck out of the newest pack, unfortunately, because I do think the playstyle of the deck is pretty cool. However, I think it is just a little bit too weak in general, but also specifically in Master Duel, because while being a pretty good combo deck into Molcharmi Fuwalos, it's a pretty bad deck into Maxi. I think it deserves more like a spot in the meat. It's around Blue Eyes level in my opinion, but it's like a little more combo heavy than Blue Eyes. They're not the same playstyle, but the power level I think is relatively similar. I'm not a big fan of this deck. I might be proven wrong at some point, but I mean, I would be happy to be proven wrong on this one, because I think this deck is pretty cool. Water is still a scary deck, I suppose. Can be solid, I think. You know, Droll has gone to 2, so that helps it a little bit, but for the most part, I don't know. I don't see a reason to play it, but at the same time, I don't think it's bad. Dracotail is top tier. I am 100% sure Dracotail is one of the best decks for the Duelist Cup. It might even be my favorite. But one thing I want to talk about real quick is Dracotail versions, because there are different ways to play Dracotail, and I just want to talk about what I think the pros and cons of these versions are. In my opinion, the 3 main ones are pure Dracotail, Dracotail branded, and Magistus Dracotail. Those are the 3 main ones that I've seen. There might be more, you know. We ran into a Tearlament Dracotail earlier today while playing. I don't really think that's a real version. Shadolls are not really a version of Dracotail, because you can just play Shadol cards like a couple beasts or whatever in any Shadol version. That doesn't really make it a different deck. It still is just Dracotail, but with like a Shadol just stuff to fuse with. I personally think the main reason why I'm rating Dracotail as a top tier deck in Master Duel is because Dracotail is very efficient and gets a lot done with very little summons. And that means Dracotail and searches, which means Dracotail is probably the best deck currently into Maxi, Molcharmi Fuwalos, and Droll and Lockbird. And I think that is awesome. I think playing a deck that doesn't care about those cards is neat. I've been enjoying this a lot because it just means I'm playing a good Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but I do not suffer as much when my opponent has those cards. And I think that is my main reason to play Dracotail. You start putting cards like the Megistus into this deck. Yes, you increase the power level of Dracotail. Yes, you increase the power of your end board, and also you increase the chances of playing through cards like Ash Blossom or Imperm or whatever, right? However, in the process, you are making the deck a lot worse into cards like Maxi, Droll, and Huva. I personally don't like this. I acknowledge that Megistus Dracotail is a good deck. It is a strong deck. But if I want to play a combo deck that aims to make a board that the opponent can't break or whatever, I think I would rather play other decks that we will also talk about in a few minutes. Like, we'll talk about Fiendsmith, Slop, we'll talk about Gem Knights, we'll talk about Lunalight, Malice, Onomat, Ryziel, Mitsu Ryziel. That I think if I'm basically what I'm trying to say is if I was trying to play a combo deck, I would rather play those decks. I think Dracotail should focus on its core strengths, and it should also focus on non-engine to win games. That is my opinion. So I would personally say out of those three that I mentioned, I think Megistus Dracotail is the worst. I think between Branded Dracotail and Pure Dracotail, it is just personal preference. I think those are two decks of very similar power level. Branded Dracotail has the additional starters, the additional ceiling from 2 branded fusions, and Pure Dracotail has a little bit more non-end. I think that's a give and take. I think both are fine and both are top tier. I do think Megistus Dracotail, while maybe still being top tier, is the worst version out of the 3. Fiendsmith, of course, I'm going to mention in a lot of variations of these decks that are coming up. Pure Fiendsmith / Fiendsmith Control, Fiendsmith like hand traps and all that kind of stuff, I think is mediocre as much as I like it. I love that deck, but I think currently some of these decks are way too hard to stop with hand traps. And I even think with the addition of the Man with the Mark, I think Fiendsmith is not even the best hand trap deck anymore, simply because it is very weak to Huva and Maxi, and Man is not. So if you play like the hand trap Primite Man deck, I think that's just a better version of Fiendsmith Control. So I think Fiendsmith Control is in a pretty rough spot. Even though I love that deck, I don't think it's the best deck to play right now. After the ban of Christia, Gem Knight combo has gotten a lot less popular on ladder. At least I haven't run into it yet. However, I will say I think Gem Knight is still a pretty strong deck, all things considered. So I'm going to throw it in strong. Now, this notably goes for the Fiendsmith version of Gem Knight that wants to go first. And once again, because people in chat seem to be a little bit confused right now, I'm talking about the Fiendsmith deck. Fiendsmith Engine is still a different story, and we are talking about that when we're talking about the individual deck. Gem Knight, with or without Fiendsmith, I think is a pretty strong deck, whether you're going first or you're going second. Currently, from what I'm seeing, the going first version is more popular. The one with Herald of the Orange Light and so on, and where you just try to use Fiendsmith to bridge into Gem Knights as well via Sprite Sprint and so on. So I think Gem Knights as a combo going first deck is still pretty strong. Whether it's top tier, I kind of doubt it. I did think it was a little weird when I played it, especially into like Charmies and Droll sometimes. Strong deck. Not sure if it's part of my like top 3 or top 5, but it's pretty good. Labyrinth has gotten the furnitures back recently, so that's why I wanted to include it. Unfortunately, I think Lab is pretty mid right now. Slaughtered by Dracotail, I think, because it just does not outgrind that deck, and Dracotail just keeps recycling cards like Urgula every turn to keep popping back row, and it's really hard to stop that. And so as a result, if you want to play Lab, you probably have to play it as like the floodgatey version, and you have to like loop D-Barrier basically. The problem is looping D-Barrier doesn't work on turn 0, so you basically still lose every time your opponent uses 5 mana. And then also a lot of people are playing not only Ash Blossom but also Ghost Bell, and that's tough for Labyrinth because now people play like 6 hand traps that negate Big Welcome Labyrinth. So even if you have D-Barrier, you might not get into your engine because they have Bell or Ash for your Big Welcome. I think it's a rough spot. Just because D-Barrier is good against the deck, that's never been enough to make Labyrinth a top tier meta deck. Like, that's just not how it goes. Also, I've seen a couple of people play Red Reboot because of Dracotail, so that would also destroy you completely. So I don't think it's a good time to play Labyrinth. Lunalight. I think Lunalight is kind of underrated right now. I haven't been playing it much myself, but I played it a little bit. Now, of course, Baguska being banned does hurt it a little bit. Baguska is in every single Lunalight deck in the TCG for good reason. I still think Lunalight is underrated because, I mean, I think people are a little afraid to play it because it is pretty difficult to play. I did experience this myself when I played it. Like, I did mess up a couple of turns for sure. It feels kind of like Memento in that sense, where it feels disproportionately hard to learn in exchange for what you get, because ultimately you're not getting like the best deck in the format, you're just getting a strong combo deck. But if people aren't prepared for this deck, then I think it's pretty good. And especially Dracotail is a deck that like usually doesn't have good ways to out Liger Dancers. So I do think it is in a strong position if you want to put in all the time to learn it. Now, you could also take all this time and learn Dracotail or get really good at Dracotail or another deck, and then you'd probably maybe have better chances, but I'm not sure. I still want to mention Lunalight because I think it is a sleeper deck in Master Duel right now that should not be underestimated. Also, yes, good point. Best of one does help this deck, I think. So yeah. One other thing that's worth noting with both Dracotail and Lunalight is Retaliating Sea. Retaliating Sea is a card that has seen some popularity in Master Duel, and it is pretty good against Dracotail. It's also pretty good against Lunalight, and it's also good against Gem Knights. Retaliating Sea, we're gonna maybe do a non-engine tier list as well at some point. I guess let me know if you want to see that. But Retaliating Sea could be a real thing for the second stage of the Duelist Cup. It could be a real tech choice, and Lunalight would suffer from that. And here's Malice, okay? Now, as much as I would like to tell you that with Red Ransom being banned, this deck is finally gone, I don't believe it. I've seen this deck played in the Challenger Cup that I cast last week, and let me tell you, there was 4 teams of 3 people in the top 4, and every single team still had a Malice player. And no matter how much I think about it, or the more I think about it, the more I think this deck is still top tier. I will say I saw a lot less of it on ladder today when I played, and also in the first stage of the Duelist Cup. It was less popular, mainly I think because people really enjoy Dracotail, so I played against a lot of Dracotail. The non-engine lineup of the deck is still insane. You can still play Dominus Impulse and a lot of other hand traps, and that's crazy. It still is unreasonably good into Fuwalos for a combo deck. It sucks into Maxi, but against Fuwa it's fine. Doesn't care about Droll as much as some of the other combo decks. Doesn't care about Retaliating Sea if people start playing that. And can self-Droll to beat Maxi as well. And so overall, from what I'm seeing, like, yes, the combo lines started with Red Ransom for a good reason most of the time, but at the same time, like, going into Whitebinder first is still hella strong. I think there is still a way to play Malice in a way that it's top tier. It was still winning tournaments where I was looking left and right. So unfortunately, Malice still seems to be top tier. You know, you still have the same main deck as before. You still have all the extra deck tools to link climb, like all the cyber slop is still there, link decoder, splash mage, transcode talker, whatever. You still make unbeatable end boards, you still have grind game, you still draw cards like crazy. You're a little bit weaker to hand traps because Red Ransom is gone. That is true. You play a little bit worse into boards going second as well because removal is more difficult to deal with now. You can extend harder, but I still think, all things considered, it's still a top tier deck. Man, in different variations, I classify it as a solid deck. I think it's been good. My favorite version so far is the Primite version that won YCS Lil, basically hand trap control but with Primite and Man. You can play Fiendsmith Odeon. I think that one is kind of cool. I will mention I do not think that the Floodgate trap heavy version is good, because I think that is just basically flipping a coin every time. Going first, that deck is crazy. Going second, that deck is ass. So I don't like it. I think you need to play this deck with hand traps to have a chance going second. Basically, the goal of every single Odeon deck, in my opinion, should be to get into a grind game by hand trapping the opponent going second, because that's where the deck is at its best, is when it gets into a grind game. You can try to do that with Fiendsmith. That version is going to be a little bit weaker to Maxi and Fuwa, or you can try to do it with Primite and more hand traps. That version is fine, but it's more reliant on the hand traps to stop the opponent from playing completely. But overall, I think it's a solid concept. Nothing too crazy, not like my top 5 decks or whatever, but it's pretty solid. I don't hate it. The Floodgate version, I think, is mediocre. Memento is probably okay. I wouldn't recommend learning it now, because like for the amount of work you have to put in, you are just getting like a tier 2 deck, but it's not like terrible. It's probably got an okay Dracotail matchup, because you can probably beat the Dracotail board with just engine hands sometimes, but for the most part it's just like kind of similar to Lunalight, where you're putting in a lot of work to play this deck optimally, and even if you do play it optimally, I think you're still playing a worse deck than like Malice or Dracotail. It's an okay deck, you know. It's not bad just because other decks are better. Pure Mitsurugi, I think, is is a strong deck. I like it. I'm a little biased towards it. It's my favorite version of the deck by far. I do acknowledge that the combo versions of Mitsurugi are probably stronger in terms of their end board. I really like being able to play Dominus Impulse though, because Dominus Impulse is probably the best hand trap against both Dracotail and Malice. So I really like being able to play that in pure Mitsurugi. That's a real advantage. It's also an advantage for Lunalight, by the way. That deck can also play Dominus Impulse if it wants to. So I'm a fan of Mitsurugi. I like it. Mitsurugi Ryzeal, I think is, for me personally, I would rank it lower. Realistically, it might be higher. I'm not sure. I just think like making Mitsurugi even weaker into cards like Purulia, Uva, Droll, Maxi by adding more engine to it. You can. I've never been the combo deck kind of player, right? If I have the choice between those two decks, I would always pick the pure Mitsu, but you know, just because I like it more does not mean it is objectively better. So I think there's definitely reasons to play Ryzeal. Like it plays a lot stronger going second. It also makes unbreakable boards going first. If you don't get hit with Droll or Maxi or Fuba, right, then you just cook low impact hand traps. It helps you play through fairer hand traps like Ash Blossom a lot. Like if you get ashed on Saji, but then you have Ryzeal place, you might be completely fine. So yeah, and especially if people remove Droll from the deck, because look at the top tier decks, you know, Dracotail and Malice. If people stop playing Droll, then I guess there is no real reason not to play Ryzeals in Mitsurugi. That's a good point. Yeah, it's a strong deck for sure. Onomat, and this when I say Onomat, I mean Onomat Ryzeal. I also do think this deck is pretty good. I'm not sure between Onomat Ryzeal and Ryzeal Mitsurugi. I don't know which one is the better deck, but I think they are both pretty similar in terms of what they're trying to achieve, right? They're just trying to spam level 4 bodies and Ryzeals, and in the one deck you do Mitsurugi stuff, in the other deck you do Onomat stuff and Protoss. Honestly, realistically, both are just combo slop auto win if they resolve their combo. I don't think one is stronger end board than the other. Also going second, like Mitsurugi is a pretty strong engine going second. Like Murakumo is really nice to summon into boards. At the same time, the other deck has Protoss, which is probably the win con when you're going second into a board. Doesn't matter if it's like Malice, you can just summon Protoss, blow up the board, and then you win anyways. So I think they both got their individual pros and cons, but ultimately they are basically the same concept in my opinion, which is both. I think they're both cringe, but that doesn't. I'm still gonna say that they're still strong. Like they're strong decks for sure. So yeah. Orchist in different variations, I think is a strong deck. I'm not entirely sure if it's pure Orchist or if it's Fiendsmith Orchist or if it's Mitsu Orchist. They all are viable, I think. So once again, all of the decks I'm putting in the strong category here, I think are just not quite Dracotail or Malice level, but they are definitely decks that I think are going to be represented in the top 100 of the Duelist Cup. So in Orchist, if you want to play Dominus Impulse, I would recommend you try pure Orchist or Orchist Mitsu. I think the best version of Orchist, the most consistent and the one that plays through the fair hand traps the best, is Fiendsmith Orchist. That is also something worth noting. If that's your main focus, then Fiendsmith Orchist is absolutely fine. Sky Striker, my beloved. I think it's a solid deck. I genuinely believe so. I will try it more. Maybe it's even better than this, but I kind of like, I don't want to infuse too much copium into people. I like this deck, and I think the release of Dracotail is good for Sky Striker, all things considered, because Dracotail is a good matchup for Sky Striker, which is the first positive thing. Also, people might play less Droll and Lockbird with the popularity of Dracotail, which is also a good thing for Sky Striker. Now we get to the problems. Going second, you still lose to Malice every time. You lose to Onomat Ryzeal and Mitsu Ryzeal basically all the time as well. So those matchups are terrible going second. You get destroyed by Lunalight as well, even if you play freaking Hamp, which you shouldn't play Hamp because Lunalight summons 2 Liger Dancers and you can't Hamp both. There's a lot of problematic matchups for Sky Striker. And because of this, I would recommend going first when you play Sky Striker. I think you need to go first if you want to play Sky Striker, because then you at least have a chance to beat decks like Malice or Ryzeal Mitsu, Ryzeal Onomat, because the Sky Striker interruptions are not that bad. And Lunalight, right? Those decks you can actually beat if you go first against them. So I think that's what you have to do. Now, I don't know if the deck is good enough, but I will be trying it a little bit and I will report back, I guess. But I right now, my suspicion is that it's solid, but just not quite strong enough. Tenpai pretty mid. I'm happy to report that I think this deck kind of sucks. Sending decks like Malice, Mitsu Ryzeal, and Onomat format Ryzeal first is kind of crazy in my opinion. I don't think that's a good strategy. So unlike Sky Striker, this deck cannot go first, and so therefore I think it's pretty mid right now. Would not recommend Tenpai. You'll notice that I'm holding these decks to pretty high standards, right? Because I'm calling decks like Fiendsmith Control, Blue Eyes, Tenpai, Labyrinth. I'm calling them mediocre, even though in the grand scheme of things they are still pretty good Yu-Gi-Oh decks. But I'm literally talking like the highest level of like competition, like second stage of the Duelist Cup, where I genuinely think they need to be considered mediocre. Voiceless Voice, it's I don't see a reason to play Voiceless Voice right now. I'm sorry. I don't know. Also, Regenesis goes there as well. I'm just, yeah. White Forest. White Forest is interesting because I do think this deck is incredibly scary when it goes first. It's once again, it's just another one of those combo decks that if you don't have a high impact hand trap like Droll, Uva, Purulia is also good, or Maxi against it, then it probably slaughters you if it reaches the end board or even partial end boards. It's pretty bad at going second though, so I don't think it qualifies as a strong deck. I think it's around here. It's basically Mermail but with spellcasters. I think White Forest is more consistent at going first, whereas Mermail is a little bit better going second, which is give and take. As a result, you get a deck with, I think, a similar chance to do well. Not my preferred deck to play a Duelist Cup with, if I have to try and go first all the time. And that's where I stand on the meta at the moment. I guess let me know what you think. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with something, which is always the case, but that's okay. Just tell me your opinion in the comments. Keep it nice. Let me know what you're going to be playing for, I guess, ranked this month or just the Duelist Cup second stage if you plan to compete. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to stream my run as well. If you're seeing this on YouTube, I'm going to be live for the second stage of the Duelist Cup this time, and I'm going to try my best to do well. Haven't decided what I'm playing yet, but of course, currently in the process of narrowing down the options. I do think, as you can tell, I think there's two decks that are likely the best, but I think there's a couple of other strong contenders that I'm also still going to mess around with. So yeah,